The tension over allegations of Malami's malfeasance has reached new heights. There has been several exposés of infractions perpetrated under the nose of Nigeria's chief law officer, ranging from questionable acquisitions to corruption-fueled wedding of his son. Let me get your reactions over all these exposés, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, one will wonder that an administration that came to power based on the noise and the political pontification over the fixing of Nigeria's security situation, the sorry state of Nigeria's security situation, and also the economic downturn, and also majorly about the fight for corruption, as based on their theory that a strong man is what is needed rather than strong institutions. So they came in with so much hullabaloo and so much noise about fixing all the problem, only for us to run through the system. Of course, for some of us who have seen this, we've seen the pattern, we've seen the way they have approached things in the past. We know that the zebra or the tiger really change their spots and change their marks and all, or lose their marks. And we realize today that we live in that proverbial times that we have forecasted back then. Today, impunity is rife under this administration as grand haste. The heist are swept under the proverbial carpet of gifts. Magu once alleged that people buy luxurious properties, on foreign soil in his name to tarnish his image, just to fly a kite ahead of the discovery of his shady deals. I recall also that the NNPC, former NNPC MD Yakubu, also claimed that the $9.8 billion found in his place, in his premises, in his house, was a gift from friends and well-wishers. I sometimes just wish what kind of friends I have, And there are also a lot of expensive buildings in Asokoro and the choicest places in town, that are given as gifts to certain family members of sitting heads of government at all levels. Now, when you look at the spate of the level at which executive felons are breaking bad in our environment today, you still want to ask yourself a question that, are we still fighting corruption in this country? You want to begin to question if we still have that same vociferous and, noisy and cacophonic leader who keeps saying that he wants to rid Nigeria of corruption. In those days, in the past few years, of course, we know that corruption is something that has been embedded in the rulership of this country. We know that it has been aggravated, and expanded under military interrograms. But remember that the people who rule us today are still militant in their ways. They are only wearing a different kind of uniform, which is the civilian agbada. But the actual culture of impunity is still embedded in what is happening. And the same way corruption was overlooked in the 80s, under the same administration, under the same leadership, is the same way they have been overlooked today. In the early periods of 1999, there is a form of pseudonymous ownership of, illicit properties and all by public officials. They put it under several names and several hidden, under several guises and all. But today, corruption is brazen and the heists are no longer hidden. They rub it religiously in the faces of the people that have been deliberately, impoverished under this oppression or oppressive government that we call a pseudo-democracy. So with what we have today, people no longer hide their wealth. Public officers who were nothing, who had nothing prior their appointment as public officers, are now, living in grand opulence that most leaders in, advanced countries cannot even boast of. Imagine the children of these same people who have not worked a day in their life, who are mostly failures from their foreign universities that they expensively paid for, are now brandishing expensive vehicles, expensive houses, expensive malls, expensive ventures that they can never account for. And they rub it in the faces of poor, innocent, impoverished citizens of this country whose sin was just that they were fooled and they were brainwashed into voting the worst of administrations in the history of our democracy. And so Malami's case, as alleged, is not a surprise to some of us, because the administration itself protects its own felons and they don't bring to book their own people. Mago's case before seems he has fallen out of favor from certain elements within the government and he needs thrown under the bus. But he has decided not to go down alone, despite the fact that it's not about him and several spirits using, to at least cover up for his own personal heist and the rest, are no longer working for him. He decided to start pulling down other people as well. And that's why we're seeing, the anuses, and the rear and the behind of other people who are pointing fingers at the individual. So a lot is yet to be revealed, and we are going to see what the outcome of the bullion van investigation that we have been clamoring for the past, months. There was a time that there's no week you will not see me and EFCC at heads over their disproportionate investigation that is targeted at opposition parties, or opposition politicians, or people that they feel are the enemies of the government. This is what we need to begin to do in this environment to hold these people to account and to ensure that we stand by our country and not sweep all these allegations or all these heists, under the carpet.
Analysts are dismayed at how the Attorney General, Abubakar Malami, has seemed to repeatedly bend the judiciary to the government's political interest or his own personal interest, which has generated significant controversy, but no personal consequences. For example, Malami engaged the services of a company facing criminal trial along with its MD for stealing crude oil to auction 11 sea vessels holding petroleum products seized by the federal government. One begins to wonder who does that. And not to talk of his intervention in several criminal cases to the benefit of himself and his their cronies. It's just quite unfortunate why all these are happening under an administration who claims and made us to believe that he's fighting against corruption.
It is actually the estrangement of probity, even under an admin that postured as being laden with integrity, has now been proven beyond every reasonable doubt that they don't even understand the meaning of integrity, that they don't even understand what probity means. They don't even understand what transparency, accountability, or proper governance even entails under a democracy. And with this, we can begin to tell ourselves and ask ourselves the real question, whether we live in a country, whether we live in a republic, whether we live in a place where the rule of law, actually is prioritized, or we live in a jungle where every man does what seems right in their own eyes.
Buhari seems to have little in the way of practical recourse as far as this issue is concerned. Is Buhari going to suspend the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami, so that the appropriate investigations can be done, or is it one rule for Magu, another rule for Malami?
What I'm hoping for, or what I hope to see, is for the administration to make a believer of us, to show that they have been able to retrace their steps and they are ready to be accountable to Nigerians who they are meant to actually serve, by bringing to book every single person who has been indicted, who have been proven to have been unscrupulous, in their ways under their administration. This is the only way that can actually redeem this government, because a time is coming in this environment where the people, Nigerians, the impoverished, the deliberately impoverished Nigerians, we have no other thing to feast on but the 1% oppressing them with the looted funds from our collective patrimony. And this time will come unless the government proves us, makes a believer of us, and bring these people to book swiftly. We probably may not have a democracy as we proceed.
Okay, please go ahead.
Because as a were, we are beginning to see that social Darwinism, is being unleashed on Nigeria today. And of course, for those who really want to understand what social Darwinism is all about, it's about a theory that individuals, groups, and peoples are subject to the same Darwinian laws of natural selection, and animals. It is really discredited. Darwinism, as advocated by Herbert Spencer in the 19th and 20th century, as used to justify political conservatism, imperialism, and racism, just to discourage intervention and reform. You can see how much, reform is being resisted in this country. We have looked at the Nigerian police, as it were, the closest authority to Nigerians, being proven to be rogues, to be criminals, to be the same armed robbers and kidnappers in our society. But what exactly has happened since then? Despite the fact that we are doing all that we can to facilitate an executive bill without the executives actually participating in anything. And even when those bills are eventually sent to them, they will ruin all our efforts by appointing the same cronies, the same people whose mindset created the same problem that we're fighting, into the board of that particular, to administer what they don't know anything about. So these are the problems that we're having, which begins to make us ask ourselves that in whose interest exactly is this government, standing by? In whose interest are they working? So we need to begin to ask them these questions, and it is imperative that they answer us, because we cannot continue this way.
Let me also get your perspective on this. For example, even the ruling party, the APC, who control the Senate, seems to short-circuit any bid to call for investigation of the Attorney General. Not to talk of removing him. I mean, what do you make of that, sir?
I believe that the present Senate that we have is a rubber stamp Senate by all intents and purposes. We can also always tell that as we were, it had become a unique burden to the entire populace now that we don't actually have a Senate. What we have is a rubber stamp that actually approves any rubbish that comes from the presidency. And as we were, impunity has now become an incontrovertible biological situation in Nigeria, to the point where we cannot expect the representative of the people, or the supposed representative of the people at the Senate, to actually represent the people. The House of Rep are still being held accountable, and they are still at least showing promise to actually stand by the people. But again, how do we begin to guarantee concurrence between the two houses enough for them to bring out the will of the people to be passed? So I am not hopeful. I am not expectant that the Senate is going to do anything that will be in line of the expectation of people who are capable of self-thought in Nigerian society. Finally, I believe that they will work around what seems to position them or posture them as being loyal to the president.
Finally, shouldn't Nigerians be worried about how impervious these executive officials think they are to any meaningful accountability and consequences for their wrongful conduct?
Nigerians, we have always said this, that a radical change is at hand. Nigerians are no longer as foolish as the people think they used to be. They are also no longer the kind of people. The generation you are dealing with now is not the same generation that you dealt with under Gani Fawehinmi and the rest of them. We probably may not be burning houses, but there are better ways in which you can engage government and begin to make government accountable to us based on the rule of law and based on the provisions of our constitution. The way things are going now, where everybody is breaking bad, where the children of those who are in public offices are living large, where unaccountably, and where things are going bad and nobody is saying anything, it's not going to continue that way. Nothing lasts forever, and the end of impunity has come.
Thank you very much, Segun Awosanya. We really appreciate your insightful analysis as far as these issues are concerned. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for always.